All right, this is my developmental learning theory comic strip, sir, and it's basically something, very basic that I made, but I thought it was a little fun to, just put them a little bit through a little adventure. So with the first slide, it's basically the two characters. They're waiting in space, just waiting to get picked up, and they're kind of just waiting and figuring out what they want to do. And he's like, "Oh, let's just, talk about the assignment that Professor Posey has assigned to us." So for the first two slides, they talk about the terms that were really important. And as you can see, all of them right here. For the first part was theory of cognitive development, genetic epistemology, schemas, assimilation, accommodation, equilibration, sensory motor stage, pre-operational stage, concrete operational stage, formal operational stage, and discovery learning was for the first part. And then for the second part was the proximal development, zone of proximal development area. Talking about that, theory, scaffolding, the more knowledgeable other, effective scaffolding, knowledge through sociable interaction, reciprocal teaching, and collaborative learning. And we really go into the meanings starting the third slide. They're kind of just walking to the landing zone of the spaceship so they can finally go home. And it goes into the theory of cognitive development, basically explaining how a child understands the world and its surroundings, how it really understands it well, what kind of mental processes it does to really just understand its surroundings at different ages. And this theory mainly focuses on children, not really too many on older individuals, but mainly focuses on children and how they really process thinking and just their mental capacities. And they then goes to genetic epistemology, which is basically the origins of thinking, when we start thinking as a whole, when is the first thought we actually have, when we actually start using our minds to solve problems. And the schemas are basically how it says the building blocks of intelligence, behavior, and organizing knowledge. Basically, a schema is kind of like your knowledge, like using, it used an example saying that schemas are more like index cards and kind of like saying, okay, this is an apple, then you switch it, this is an orange, and all these different ways of seeing it. They then go into the assimilation and accommodation area, and it's basically viewed as intellectual growth as an adaptation process. Not really one as kind of like you read, but more like, okay, through trial and errors when we really go through intellectual growth. Okay, and to the next slide. It goes into assimilation and accommodation. Assimilation is basically the way somebody deals with new situations, new knowledge, how they would deal with it. And accommodation basically happens when the current schema doesn't work and must be changed. An example that I saw is when a child looks at an older man with who is balding and only has hair coming around the sides of his head. A clown has seen that before as a clown, and it automatically associates that man as being a clown. But the father, being the accommodation side of things, states like that is not a clown because it's not doing what a clown does, such as making people laugh, wearing colorful clothes, doing silly things. Even though it may have the hair of a clown, it doesn't do clown things. So that would be the accommodation section. And equilibration is the force that moves development. Excuse me 1 second. Okay, just want to see if it was working. Equilibration goes into stating that learning isn't always a consistent process. It isn't just like line by line, kind of just going straight. It jumps around sometimes. Okay, you may understand certain parts, but not every part. Sometimes we may forget and we have to look back, even though we understood it at one point. So it's kind of just jumping around as equivalent. It's the force that moves development. And then it goes into the stages of development in a child. And it first goes into the sensory motor stage, which is knowing an object exists even when hidden. They've seen something before and they know it exists even though they haven't seen it again. This may be a very young age, up to 2 years old. So that was with a child, it's still learning words, learning images and such things. So, and I'll also go into the pre-operational stage, the ability to connect words with objects. This is a little bit older child. They start putting words together. They associate apple with the actual fruit. They associate keys with keys. They associate blue with the color blue, and so that would be the pre-operational stage of the development. The next slide, there we go. oh no, this isn't it. Concrete operational stage is when a child can start figuring out certain problems in their own mind. They can start solving issues in their own minds, and that makes it a lot. Their mental capacity is starting to grow at this stage, and then the formal operational stage is able to think about complex concepts and test hypotheses. They're able to test hypothesis. They're able to start critical thinking, and this is where it starts, usually around age 11, and it starts growing as they get older into adulthood. The last word for that section was discovery learning. Was basically a child learns best through discovery, and their own personal exploring was when they learn the most, through their own personal experiences as a child. That would be that section, and then it goes into the zone of proximal development. The zone of proximal development is basically what a learner can do versus what they can't do quite yet. They still need help. They still need assistance into learning a certain topic or a certain lesson, which could be for all of us as well. I guess we're all in that stage majority of the time. And I'm going to scaffolding. Scaffolding is basically in areas that are too advanced for the learner. So the learner only focuses on what he knows already. Alright, and then it goes into the more knowledgeable other. It's basically the person that provides assistance so the learner can help solve the problem. It could be maybe a fellow student that may understand it better, and that they could be the more knowledgeable other. It doesn't always have to be the teacher. It could be a third party. Not a third party. It could be just one of their, maybe a parent, maybe just additional help. And then it goes into effective scaffolding, which is basically a variety of factors that goes into learning, going through effective learning. Yes, the effective scaffolding is basically a variety of factors, kind of like going into making the task simple enough, demonstrating the task, maintaining the child's attention during the demonstration in order for them to learn effectively in least amount of explanations. Alright, and then we go into knowledge through social interaction. It's where teachers use scaffolding and allow students to share what they have learned. Scaffolding such as, excuse me one moment. This can go into basically what a teacher can use this sort of scaffolding to help them learn more, such as relating a topic to a previous topic that they already understand, and other forms of teaching. Alright, reciprocal teaching really talks about a student learning from 4 factors: summarizing, questioning, clarifying, and predicting, which is they're kind of just like going through it. They're kind of repeating back what they were being taught. They're summarizing what they learned. They're asking questions about it. They're trying to clarify what was basically, and kind of predicting where they're going to go from there. And then the last one was collaborative learning. It's basically like kind of like a group effort on this. It's basically a group working together where students that understand it are working with students that are having a bit of a hard time, where they are helping each other out. The students kind of explain where they are getting stuck, and then the students will help them. So the students that are having trouble will be able to solve it on their own. They're not doing the work for them, but they're just giving them that extra push to help them out. And that concludes the developmental learning theory comic strip. And it kind of ends with like a little silly way by saying like, oh man, that was a lot of work. The ship has landed, now let's go home. And thank you again.